Who's next on the chopping block? Who's got a nice little pithy question or statement for the Rav, or just maybe for everyone in the room?
I got a question.
Wireless caller, yes.
This is Kalev.
Oh, Kalev. Okay, how are you? It's good to see you again.
Kalev, my Kalev.
Pretty good. Okay, I've heard the rabbi saying a couple of times that it's better that and I don't mean to hit a dead horse here, but I just want to understand the rabbi's point of view. So he's saying that it's better for a person that an atheist become a Christian than any other religion. So I would try to one-up it and say, why Christianity? Why not, say, for example, Islam? That I would say it mimics better Judaism than Christianity on practical terms.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good question.
Honestly, I wouldn't exclude a peaceful form of Islam either, but I don't think that Islam mimics Judaism better than Christianity does from an ethical perspective. Ceremonially, yes. A lot of the practices that Islam has incorporated into its belief system comes from the Talmud. I mean, heck, even the hijab is mentioned by the Rambam. It appears in the Mishnah. Prostration during prayer. Jews also pray 5 times a day, but they just lump it into 3 segments. So, notion, like going around the Jewish world, that Muhammad learned how to pray by watching Jews pray during Yom Kippur is nonsense. Jews actually have 5 different prayer times. That we just lump it into 3. Islam also has 5, and they typically also lump it into 3. In terms of ethics, I mean, even charity, I think zakat is 2%, if I remember correctly, while a Christian gives his money to his godly institution by what the Torah instructs, which is 10%. Although Islam is an offshoot of Christianity, and Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism, they're both considered people of the book, and they're both tolerated under a dhimmi status. Muslims believe that Jews have a corrupted Torah. Now, they don't teach that the ethical portions are corrupted, but they teach that the narrative is corrupted, and it's replaced by their book. So anything that's applicable and prescriptive in an ethical fashion has to appear in the Quran for it to be binding. Now, the vast majority of Christians in this room tonight are Hebrew rooters, Messianics, who uphold every one of the 613 commandments as God-breathed and God-spoken. I mean, I think that alone shows that they're a lot closer to Judaism than someone who has duplicated and cloned the Torah in an Arabized sense and excluded many other commandments like Shabbat.
A quick follow-up question to that. So would you say that that Muslims, I know you're not a Muslim apologist, but would you say that Muslims worship the same God as Jews and Christians?
No. I consider Islam idolatry, and I don't consider Messianic Judaism idolatry, although I do consider Christianity idolatry. Why? Is because the way you know who you worship is by what that God expects from you. If your God expects something different in terms of source material, right? I mean, Christians still point back to the message in Torah and says, yes, that's applicable, right? But right when you said, no, they have a corrupted Torah and we have the true message. Even though Allah comes from Eloah, it's the same. If you heard Temanim speak Temanit, whatever, it depends what that God expects from you. And being that they've tossed out the initial message as a corruption and saying the Jews actually worship Ezra as the son of God and that we actively corrupted the scriptures, it's hard to claim that the God from those scriptures is your God now, just because he happens to have the same name. And he happens to be one. But this whole notion that only because you're a monotheist, that you're not an idolater is completely nonsensical.
Well,
why do you think that the Rambam was the lone voice in this?
I have a whole video on it. There's many people, including the Ran, with the Ran considered Islam idolatry. I can't remember all the other sources, but there's no other text anywhere else that said that Islam was an idolatry but the Rambam. The Rambam was the first one to do it. As a matter of fact, the reason he did it was because Jews in that part of the world were being killed by the Almohads, who were forcing people to convert to Islam or die. And many Jews, knowing that this was an avodah zarah, chose to die instead of converting. He said, no, you don't have to do that. Yeah. Being that Islam is almost like a docile form of paganism. Paganism is really just anything that's not from the Torah, that this is in some way monotheistic. Also, I don't think he considered them Noahides, because to be at least what he calls the Chasidei Amot HaOlam, like you have to believe that the Torah was given on Mount Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu. They believe that they have the perfected Torah, that the Torah we have is corrupt. They're also not subjects of ours. I mean, the notion of dhimmi is very identical to the notion of being a noid. You're a tolerated second class. And that's how they view Jews. Like, how could Jews not view them as completely foreign to their belief system? But not to mention that the notion of avodah zarah doesn't mean avodat pesilim. It doesn't mean that you're worshiping statues. It means a foreign service or a foreign worship. That means that you're serving God in ways not prescribed by the Torah.
Judaism a bust.
This is why, I mean, it's avodah zarah. I'm not the only person who made this claim. After I made my video, but Rabbi David Bar Chaim made his video saying the exact same thing. And at least in my circles, he's very much respected as an Elohim nowadays. I mean, he's one of the more knowledgeable people out there. And I actually, when I was finding sources for my video, there was a rabbi, his name was, I think, Menachem Gottlieb in Eretz Yisrael, who sent me notes on a lecture I think he gave in my old yeshuv in Kohav Shachar. And that's where I got all the sources for my video. But yes, most people just reiterate what the Rambam teaches regarding both Christianity and Islam. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but Ashkenazi Judaism is actually of the opinion that Christianity is not technically idolatry, while Sephardi Judaism under the Rambam taught that it was. So it shows that also wasn't a monolithic idea. Now the Meiri also said it wasn't idolatry. If you thought it was just the students of Rashi that felt in that manner. But all this stuff is not set in stone. Nowadays, people do what's popular. They follow, Shulchan Aruch is really 90% Rambam anyways. All right, but there's other opinions out there. The truth is, we're never going to know if it's ultimately idolatry or not from a halachic perspective, because it doesn't violate any of the precepts of idolatry that appear in the Mishnah. Now, it could be idolatry from a different perspective. Heck, it says, I made a video on the whole notion of pagama brit, of kiri, of spilling seed. And it says there in the Gemara, that someone who spills seed, it's like he worshipped idols. There's so many statements out there by Chazal that consider any stupid little thing as idolatry. Heck, even the Rambam says that if someone loses his temper, it's like he worshipped idols. Okay, now that's not a halachic statement, but there's a lot of these statements out there that people just run with and try in that spirit to label everything they dislike also as idolatry. Now that statement was lost for a while. Like, people didn't know where the Rambam got it from because it doesn't appear in the Talmud, but I think they found it in the Sifra, that it says that if someone loses their temper, it's like they worship idols. Now there's people who actually take that literally. People have to realize that even the Rambam statements that are not from a prescriptive manner in the Mishnah, like not the Mishnah Torah, but the Mishnah, are also just opinion.
So people would say that the reason if you get angry, you lose your temper is because you're not really accepting the situation.
Whatever.
God, if God is really in control of the situation and you're losing your temper, it would be like, a diss to God in a way, no?
Right. So what we shouldn't do is try to apply biblical concepts like idolatry to modern day issues from an authoritative perspective, because then we're just desecrating the Torah. First of all, like the phrase avodah zarah doesn't even appear in the Torah. Okay, that's a rabbinic term, and it's confusing to begin with because Masechet Avodah Zarah doesn't even deal majority with idolatry. It deals with how we deal living amongst idolaters, like how we should keep our wives away from idolaters and our animals, because it says that they have this proclivity to rape your animals. Gentile by Chazal is almost synonymous with idolater. It's a big balagan. Like, your best bet is to stick with the Mishnah's precepts of what idolatry is, and then assume that if it doesn't violate like a direct Torah command, for example, if someone's like worshiping a completely different god, if you're worshiping Zeus or Apollo, then clearly that's a real foreign worship. Okay. But if someone has some sort of quasi belief system, they have a black hat, they're keeping Torah mitzvahs, but they happen to have a disagreement on the unity of God in any way, whether you believe he's in a tzmut and a goof, or whether you believe he walked this earth for 33 years, put all that aside and let's just have a drink together and spend Shabbos and keep Torah and make this world a better place.